The story began on a Staten Island ferry called the Mortimer. Two maintenance workers, Neil and Dominique, were doing a late-night inspection. Neil said the hole was from the 1920s. Then he pried open a sealed chamber with a crowbar. He was excited, thinking he had struck gold. He said, "This piece of history right here gotta be worth 50 grand, easy." But just then, a small figure appeared through the smoke. Suddenly, a monster rushed at them and bit off Neil's nose in one snap. Dominique got scared and ran for her life, but in her panic, she tripped and fell into the chamber. At that moment, a deep growl echoed from above. That mouse was Steamboat Willie, a large, intelligent, humanoid creature. The scene shifted. The Mortimer ferry slowly left the port and sailed toward the other side. Meanwhile, a teenage boy walked alone into the lounge area. He was about to use some illegal drugs, but suddenly, an eerie whistling sound came from nearby. He looked around but saw no one. When he turned back, he noticed his mask had mysteriously fallen to the floor. Just as he was puzzled, the whistling started again. Curious, he walked over to pick up the mask, but it suddenly spun around and grew legs. The boy thought it was a prank, so he got angry and turned to leave. But then, the door behind him creaked open by itself. He looked back, and the mask had vanished. He peered into the doorway, and there it was. The mask was now inside. Frightened, the boy turned to run, but Willie suddenly slashed his ankle with a knife. The boy crawled away, groaning in pain. The next second, Willie picked up a torch from the ground and stabbed it straight into the back of the boy's head. Meanwhile, a girl named Selena needed to use the bathroom, but the women's restroom was under repair. In a rush, she entered the men's room instead. She heard chewing noises coming from one of the stalls. As she leaned in to check, EMT Amber suddenly startled her from behind. It turned out Amber had found Selena's lost sketchbook, but it was already soaked with water. Selena tossed it into the trash without a second thought. Still shaken, she quickly left the restroom. She didn't know that leaving just saved her life. Not long after, the spotlight on the ferry's top deck suddenly moved. Officer Pat began investigating the cause. He vaguely saw a quick-moving shadow nearby and immediately became alert. Just as he stepped closer, a hammer smashed into his right foot. Then another hit struck his left leg. The pain was so intense he couldn't stand. He had to crawl, desperately reaching for his gun. But the next moment, the hammer came crashing down on his hand. While enjoying the breeze, Selena faintly heard someone crying for help. She followed the voice to the back of the ship and witnessed a horrifying scene. Pat's body was brutally shredded by the ship's propeller. At that moment, Willie turned and saw Selena screaming. He even cheerfully waved at her. Selena was terrified and ran off. She quickly told the ferry crew what she saw, but by the time everyone got there, everything had already been swallowed by the sea. Some of them began to doubt whether Anna had been telling the truth. Meanwhile, Captain Clark noticed the fog getting thicker. He grabbed the radio to report the situation to the control tower, but the signal was terrible. Suddenly, he heard a strange noise. He looked around cautiously but found nothing. Then a photo on the wall caught his attention. Just as he moved closer to check it out, he saw a terrifying reflection in the glass. In the fight that followed, Willie used a wire to slash Clark's throat. Willie jumped on top of Clark's body and happily danced around. Then he took control of the steering wheel and changed the ferry's direction. Still shaken, Selena claimed she saw a demonic rodent wearing shorts and a hat, but no one believed her. Only a deckhand named Pete tried to comfort her, saying that anything could happen in New York. Just then, First Mate Tommy went to the wheelhouse to report in, but when he arrived, he found the place had turned into a crime scene. He quickly tried to contact the control tower, but there was no signal. Even the navigation system was broken. They were now completely lost in the thick fog. Tommy told Pete to gather all the passengers to help look for the killer. Meanwhile, two influencer girls were filming a video for social media. Their loud music caught Willie's attention, but he clearly didn't like this type of girl. He even seemed disgusted by their vanity and non-stop talking. While the two girls kept posing and figuring out new angles, Willie finally lost his patience. He crawled onto a bulldozer and slowly started it up, driving straight toward them. But when the girls saw the lights turn on, they thought it made their video even better. They had no idea they were seconds away from disaster. This entire scene was witnessed by Amber, who happened to be passing by. Willie used the chance to slip away. Elsewhere, the crew had gathered some passengers on the lower deck. Amber rushed over to find Selena, saying she finally believed everything Selena had said. Right now, the most important thing was to warn the rest of the passengers, who still had no idea. But just then, a door blocked their path. A police officer on the ferry, Lieutenant Diaz, announced that Captain Clark had been killed. This news instantly threw all the passengers into a panic. To calm everyone down, Diaz confidently told the crowd that if they worked together, they could definitely catch the captain's killer. The passengers suddenly got pumped up, cheering and promising to cooperate with Diaz. But the very next second, a rod pierced straight through Diaz's throat. As Diaz collapsed to the floor, everyone finally saw Willie's true face. Willie spun around, dancing proudly for his latest kill. The passengers gathered their courage, ready to capture Willie alive, but he didn't panic. He calmly grabbed a fire hydrant and turned the valve toward the crowd. The powerful water pressure knocked them all to the ground. Then he smashed the electrical panel. Everyone on the deck was electrocuted to death. Luckily, Selena and 2 others who were stuck outside managed to survive the massacre. Soon, Pete and a few other survivors made it to the wheelhouse. The bad news, Tommy was dead. The good news, since Pete hadn't finished his internship, he was now officially the captain of the ferry. Pete remembered there was an emergency supply box at the bottom of the ship. It might contain a flare gun, which they could use to signal for help. Just then, an old man named Barry climbed up from below. Terrified, he said the urban legend was true. Back when he was young, he had heard the story of Steamboat Willie. In the 1930s, a kind captain named Walter found a strange mouse in the ship's hold. It looked like some failed lab experiment. Walter took it in and named it Willie. They lived like a fairy tale, man and mouse. But then a storm hit. Walter slipped and fell into the sea. Since then, Willie, heartbroken from losing his best friend, became twisted and unstable. He started killing passengers on this very ferry. If people hadn't seen the monster with their own eyes, no one would ever believe such a crazy story. Now, their only chance was to find the flare gun and signal for rescue from the other side. Since no one knew the ship's layout well, they split into 2 teams to search for the supplies. Pete teamed up with Moses, but they had barely walked far when they ran into Dominique, the maintenance worker from the beginning. It turned out, she had been doing repairs in the engine room all this time and survived the earlier attack. Dominique said the flare launcher still worked, but the ship's power system was broken. She needed their help to fix it. The 2 men followed her without suspicion. Soon they reached the flare launcher. But just then, Dominique picked up a steel pipe and swung it hard at Moses. It turned out she had already submitted to Willie and was now working for him. Meanwhile, Selena and Amber spotted Willie nearby. They didn't dare make a sound, but the next second, Amber accidentally stepped on a long nail on the ground and cried out in pain. At the same time, they spotted the emergency supplies box just a few steps away. Selena rushed over to open it, but suddenly, she heard a creepy whistling sound behind her. She turned around in fear. Willie stood there smiling, offering her a flower made from human ears. Selena screamed in terror. Amber seized the moment and stabbed Willie in the eye with the nail. Willie ran off in pain, but when they opened the emergency box, they found it completely empty. At that moment, Willie entered the engine room. As soon as Dominique saw him, she immediately stood at attention and saluted. She claimed she was following his orders and begged him to keep his promise to spare her life. But wounded and angry, Willie took out his rage on Dominique. He lunged at her and bit her to death. Moses took the chance to grab a flare stick and handed it to Pete, telling him to take his son Mateo and escape. Then Moses picked up a flare gun and aimed it at Willie. A massive explosion rocked the engine room. Water began flooding in from the bottom of the ship. The doors were warped and couldn't open anymore. Pete handed Mateo to Selena for safety, then turned back to fight Willie himself. But in the water, Willie had the upper hand. Pete soon went completely silent. The 3 of them rushed into the wheelhouse. Mateo found an old photo showing Captain Walter and Willie together. When he unfolded the bent corner of the photo, a second mouse appeared, clearly Willie's female mate. It turned out Willie had been wandering the ocean all these years, hoping to find his lost love. Selena suddenly noticed that the pattern on the female mouse's dress matched the one on her sling bag exactly. No wonder Willie hadn't attacked her. Selena immediately came up with a plan to deal with Willie. Amber then took Mateo up to the deck. The fog over the sea finally cleared. A patrol boat in the distance spotted them. But just then, the creepy whistling sound returned. Amber grabbed a steel pipe and fought with Willie. She was knocked to the ground in the struggle. At that critical moment,
"Where's my rascally little..."
Selena appeared dressed like the female mouse. Willie was instantly mesmerized. As he got closer, Selena pulled out a hammer and tried to strike him, but she missed. Willie quickly turned and ran away. Selena ran to check on Amber's injuries, but didn't realize Willie had spotted Mateo hiding in the corner. Willie cruelly pushed the boy into the sea. Selena rushed forward but twisted her ankle and nearly fell into the water herself. Willie picked up the steel pipe, ready to finish her off, but that moment reminded him of when his love fell into the sea. He couldn't do it. Instead, he pulled Selena back to safety. Then, Willie offered her a daisy, as if trying to win her affection. But suddenly, Amber appeared again and distracted him. Selena took the chance and stabbed Willie in the head with a pair of scissors. Willie fell into the ocean. Luckily, Mateo had grabbed onto a floating trash bin. Selena then saw the rescue boat getting closer. They finally let out a sigh of relief, but what they didn't know was that among the trash washed ashore, Willie was lying there, barely alive. Right beside him stood a female mouse in a skirt, hinting that Willie's story may not be over.